how has the responses been for the book?
It's been amazing. I mean, initially I was, figuring out, was I going to keep this story, just in the house? Was I going to give it to those in the community, my network? So I kind of put it out there, just kind of to the universe, put it out there for paid copies, free copies, downloadables, PDFs, whatever I could do, because I felt as each day went on early on with the virus that more people needed additional information on things, but from a kid-friendly perspective,
Right.
not necessarily from a scientific or from a political agenda, but really just, how can you approach this topic with your children to reinforce some of the important things? And the response has been amazing. I've had the platforms that I'm monitoring, when you put it out there, you just don't know which part of the universe it's going to get to. So the platforms that I'm monitoring, there's been about 25,000 downloads. I've sold over about 2,000 e-book and physical copies of the book. And then, I've been having, every day I wake up and there's there's an email or there's a message from someone. The National Library of South Africa, they requested to get it out to their 200 plus affiliates. Books and Homes Australia has made it available to all of their participants. So you just start to it starts to kind of, spider web all over the globe, and you get the feedback, and it's been very positive. Of course, not everybody. I think to this day I have one person who reached out and was like, they weren't happy with, there's a cartoonish monster of the coronavirus on the front cover. And, they, gave me some feedback on, they didn't think that was appropriate for children. And you just relay and affirm your stance. And she was very polite about it, but all those things are welcome. Everybody's feeling it differently. Everybody is impacted very differently. All you can do is be respectful, get the information out. And, that's what I've been able to do.
Nice. Yeah. No, you can't make everyone happy.
No, you can't. And I think if you attack things by being respectful, then even those that aren't happy, you can have a dialogue and a conversation with. And luckily this topical matter it's not controversial. I didn't get into this, I didn't get into the science behind it, the politics behind it. I got into, hey, listen, children are struggling, just like, you have to assume that if a parent is struggling, right, mentally, their mental well-being, they've lost a job, they've lost family members, they don't know when they're going to return back to work, we have to assume that children are feeling that same level of anxiety. So they're seeing it and feeling it, but they're also processing it very differently. So this book, and along with other books, another side project that came out of this more recently in the last 2 to 3 weeks, I've been collaborating with about 20 other authors that have written about the coronavirus for children. And we've come together to start to work together to get our books in other channels and avenues, because it's all about the message. It's not about competition or trying to, outdo or outsell another book. It's really just about, hey, listen, you're giving the same information, but you're telling a different story. So let's get together, because if a child's reading my story, I want them to read your story as well.
That's cool that you guys are collaborating together and doing that.
Yeah, we didn't know, we kind of put it out there. We started a Facebook group, a private group, and we've been seeing, I was seeing like, oh, here's a book over here talking about, why does grandma wear a mask when she comes over to visit? Well, here's why. And it's a fantastic book. And I'm like, I looked at it, I read it, and I'm like, let me reach out to this author and see if someone's going to read my book, I want them to read their book, right? I mean, there's really no competition when you're equally trying to promote well-being in a pandemic.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. So aside from writing, what's the doctor part of your name?
So I have a doctorate degree in organizational leadership and management. And I also have multiple certifications in sports psychology and mental well-being. So the other part, and kind of how I opened up when I said, we wear multiple hats, we do different things. I coach soccer. I've coached soccer for the last 20 years, and right now I coach at the college level. I coach a men's and women's team in Maryland. I also have my own consulting business where I work with athletes, coaches, and organizations on mental preparation for their competitions. So I have clients, individual clients, team-based clients, where we focus on the mental side of sports. There's a lot of focus on preparation and getting yourself physically fit, or I always say soccer for my soccer players, soccer fit for on the field, but there is a complete mental component to performance and competition. So I do a lot of work in that space as well.
That's cool. I did not.
Yeah, I think so.
I would have never thought your degree was an actual degree.
My degree, my educational doctorate.
Right. Well, because you're doing it in like organizational, I did not know. I'm learning about new degrees and such as I go forward, which I'm like, hey, I should have explored more when it was my time to go to college.
Well, there are so many opportunities formally and informally in education. So my doctorate degree in the educational space, there's what's called an EDD, an educational doctorate. And there's a lot of different subcategories, or we would call them concentrations, administration, language, reading. I mean, there's so many ways that you can concentrate your doctorate to become more focused on the things that you really are interested in and supporting. Mine is a little bit more general. The organizational, the leadership component side, and then my passions in sports psychology and mental well-being, that kind of rounds it out. So I always tell people, you got to find, when you're doing formal education or informal education, you just have to find whatever your field or your background or your people are doing, and go get those levels of certification. There's a lot of times people get things that don't match up, and I won't call it a wasted degree. I don't think education is an investment, not a waste, but sometimes you're not able to apply certain degrees to certain subject areas. So education is what you put in, what you put in is what you take out, right? So
right.
I think that's also important as well.
So now with the book, and you say you have these couple of more coming, are you going to maybe switch it up and do more adult styles, or are you going to stick with children books?
I'm going to stick with this genre. I like it. I don't know if I'll do, early readers or young adult or adult. It's interesting. I'm not really a big fiction reader myself. I do like certain series, but I probably gravitate, my reading is more nonfiction. If anything, historical fiction, something where I'm learning and enjoying. But I do have one idea, but I don't know. I have a couple people in my network that are also in the screenwriting space. So I think it might be more packaged well for trying to see if we can get it, do a screenwriting piece or a script piece versus putting it into a book. But I'm just, I'm toying around with it. And that's what you do, right? As people who are in the creative space, sometimes it works and sometimes it sits on the shelf. But I think I'm going to stay in this space for a little bit. I enjoy it. I want to get the next two out. And then there's a third project, a poetry compilation, almost like an anthology, because I've been doing it and writing them, but I just haven't published them. So, there's a bunch of that I want to get out there. But it's interesting. I just found someone who I love her. I love her illustrations. It's just top notch. And I want to be able to I think I want to collaborate with her. I think I want to submit the poetry to her, let her look at it, and let her give her take on the possible illustration of it. So, but these are like say anything else, right? We have all these projects, all these ideas. Mm-hmm. What takes precedent? What's going to pay the bills. You always have to look at it like that too. it's unfortunate. We love, even like artists, musical and in paint, they have to, they still have to pay the bills, right? They love doing pieces of this, but what's going to also allow them to do that and continue to do that?
Right. Yeah. You love doing it. You have a passion. And I tell people, I was like, I would do it if I didn't have any bills. I'd do it for free because I just love doing it. But someone has to pay my car.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're managing multiple things. And I always say, because people have said, maybe if you just concentrate fully on this, well, right now I can do both. I can have my consulting and my coaching, and I can write. I make time and space for both. Maybe one day that won't be a possibility, but I'll cross that bridge when I get there.
Mm-hmm. Have you been using the same illustrator or using new ones?
Well, I do my own illustration. So about 6 years ago, I took a class, an InDesign class and an Illustrator class, and I kind of fell in love with it. And it's been a long process because that's not my natural ability. I was never someone who sat with a sketch pad and just kind of drew things up. So, but I always loved and I always wanted to try, right? So I took a few classes 6 or 8 years ago and just started, and it's been a long, it's trial and error, really. It takes me a little bit longer because it's not my natural ability, you know what I mean? So it's not that I can't do it, it's just it's taken longer than most. So the current works that I'm working on, the book I just published and the other two, I will do the illustration for those. But I want something different for the poetry book. So, when you're in this space, you meet a lot of authors and illustrators, and sometimes they're the same and sometimes they're different. Sometimes a lot of authors use specific illustrators to tell their visual part of the story. And I found one that I think will be perfect, for the poetry book. So, I think we just started conversating about, what will that look like? And I feel very good that it'll just give it a different touch than what I have.
That sounds exciting. Doing something different for your books.
Yeah, it's you have to be open to that, right? I mean, you have to be open to the idea that maybe someone else can assist and you can collaborate and just kind of tell it a different way.
How do you manage that? The consulting and then writing and coaching. What's your daily schedule?
It's funny, and that's probably only a portion of what I do. I like to be active. I live life every day as, today's the last day, because we are it doesn't matter. We're on borrowed time. I don't want to get philosophical here, but the reality of it is no one knows and nothing is guaranteed. So I want to do it all. Everything that I'm passionate about, everything that I enjoy, and I never sacrifice anything, even, spending time with my children. People, it's been tough on families the last weeks, but I look at it as I may never get the opportunity again to be home, to be here with my kids for 12 uninterrupted weeks. Like, I don't know if that'll ever be a possibility. So I took each day and I spent it with them and on the floor and in the backyard and talking. And yes, I do that every day regardless, but this was different, right? This was a little bit different, and that time I felt has been well spent. So I'm engaged in a lot of different things. I do the best I can with my time management. Some things, I'll tell you one thing that is important for anyone. You have to learn the power of no. You have to evaluate what are you willing to put your mental and physical attention to, and what needs not to be in your space at all. And, social media is a great example. I love social media, but I only spend X amount of time on it during the day. Like, I actually have it in my calendar. Like, you're going to spend 15 minutes at this time, and that satisfies my social media. And then I'm done and I'm off of it and I'm doing something and working in another way. People get drug into things that aren't providing them, opportunity. So I don't want that to happen. So I make sure that I'm very time managed.
Yep. That power of no it's so strong.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not no and, arrogantly, and I'm never going to visit this again. It's no, and here's why. It's not producing what I need at the moment.